This is Grenfell Tower. 71 people died here, and almost 1 year on, just what is being done to help this grieving community? I'm Stanley, and in this documentary I'm going to be speaking to people from the community and people that are helping to bring back normality to the residents' lives.
Tonight at 10, we're in West London, where 12 people have died and many are still missing after this residential tower block was destroyed by fire.
Capital is once again in shock. Grenfell Tower was home to hundreds of people. In the early hours, it turned into a deadly inferno.
I live literally 300 metres from the tower, and on the morning of the fire, I left my home after my children came back, so I was there from about 2:30 and watched the fire. As I'm coming down, I see, I would say, about 4 to 6 flats on fire. By the time I've parked up and stood out there, it just becomes engulfed.
Every culture, every religion, every background got together to support the terrible catastrophe that took place within Grenfell. Some of the stories where a fireman had a choice to bring down a 5-year-old, and on the right-hand side he had a choice to bring a 1-year-old with a mother. What does he do? So those are the things that no one should go through. No choice, you shouldn't go through those choices whatsoever.
Despite the trauma of the Grenfell fire, the community in North Kensington have started to get organised. The silent march now takes place on the 14th of each month to help residents find a collective voice through which they hope they can now be heard. Moira Samuels lived through the evening of the fire. She joined other members of her community to galvanise local people into taking part in the march. I wanted to find out from her if this march has begun to help people come to terms with the tragedy and whether it's something permanent.
The silent march is, as long as the community feels, we need to remember and honour those 72 people who died in the fire, and that's really, really important. It's important for us as a community, especially bereaved families, and it's important because it actually means that the whole of London come out and remember those people.
Yvette is another community member who has helped keep the enthusiasm for the march going. She feels that it's a demonstration of silent solidarity and is all the more effective for it.
It was purposefully done in silence because some people feel very uncomfortable with silence. It's a space to think, but it's a certain amount of disruption. But it's also about kind of knowing that we're there and we're present and we're standing. And also, you know, that we're not going to be silenced and we're not going to go away. I think it's also really important to know that how North Kensington community reacts on the night is nothing new and surprising. I think, you know, Notting Hill, Laverick Grove, you know, North Kensington, Latimer, whatever you want to refer to it as, has that history of kind of struggle and looking after our own anyway. So I think we're a stronger community now, but it isn't something that kind of just pulls us together on that night. It's something that's always been there.
Was I seeing here a community that's always been described as having strong bonds, but which is now becoming more focused on defending itself as a result of the disaster at Grenfell?
Every background got together to support the terrible catastrophe that took place within Grenfell. They had seen firsthand how officials could not get to the aid of the people, and they had to take everything on their own to basically support those people on the night and still 10 months later.
But for many in the community, there is still a sense of bitterness that even when the community have spoken out in the past, they've been willfully ignored. Moira is adamant that residents had been warning the council about the dangers present at the tower long before the fire.
We had been raising a lot of these issues. Those of us who were on the ground campaigning before, been active before, we'd raised issues relating to actually what was happening to social housing in the area. You know, trying to actually fight for resources for our community.
But here, perhaps the residents were not alone in being overlooked. A number of recommendations from an inquest into the Lakanal House fire in 2009 have been ignored according to many fire safety experts, including Terry Edge, who believes this was a tragedy waiting to happen.
Some of us from the forum went to an all-party parliamentary fire safety and rescue group meeting, and we had a resident there, Khadija, whose mother and brother were in the tower. And at that meeting, most of the people there are, you know, kind of white, well-educated people. Khadija was really the only resident there.
Yeah.
And there was a guy who gave a talk on Lakanal House, and that's the point he made. He said that the coroner came up with all these recommendations. And if those recommendations had been taken up, Grenfell wouldn't have happened. And it's not just Lakanal House. I mean, think back to Roman Point in the 60s, and it's this pattern that appears, you know, where there's a terrible tragedy, there's an inquest, there's recommendations, and nothing happens.
But Grenfell has opened a window on fire safety concerns that stretch well beyond the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. Similar cladding to that used on Grenfell was used in the renovation of the Chalcots estate in Camden. After Grenfell, residents were told without any notice that they had to evacuate their homes because they were not safe. Since the fire at Grenfell, residents living in high-rise blocks, like the ones behind me on the Chalcots estate, have been concerned over their safety due to the cladding on their buildings. I'm going to speak to Edwin, who lives on Burnham, one of the tower blocks on the estate.
I was actually home, I think it was Friday the 23rd of June. I was actually home. The first I heard about it or knew about the evacuation was when I literally saw it on the media. I actually thought it was a joke. I actually initially thought this can't be right because I haven't heard anything. There was a meeting the day before with the council. They didn't mention anything similar to an evacuation. So when the guys, or the council employees came around, I think they came around about 11 o'clock at night, knocking on my door and saying, you've got to get out. I asked them why initially, and then they came up with these reasons. For example, if I recall, they said the building, first they just said the building's not safe. And I said, well, what do you mean it's not safe? And then they said, well, for example, the gas risers, they just threw sort of random things at me, the doors. And I said, well, this building, it's been like this for 8 years. And then I just literally said, I'm not moving, I'm staying put. And I did, literally throughout the entire evacuation. I think it was totally unexpected. But I never actually thought that something like Grenfell would actually happen here, because I wouldn't have bought or moved in here. So it was a little bit of a wake-up call.
The Grenfell Tower fire and the poor response of the authorities locally and nationally have provoked a very real response from the embattled community of North Kensington. Ignored and placed in danger, they feel activism is now their only effective defence.
Grenfell community were united, but I think the surrounding communities have also joined in, and also it's been like a beacon of light for the rest of London, if not the rest of England or the rest of the world, of how people should get together. I mean, God forbid we have another disaster like this, but it shows how incredible human beings do get together.
Moira is convinced that the people now getting involved were not the same old crowd as before. The anger has spread and new people are getting on board.
Well, the thing is about the fire is that actually the thing that most interested me was the fact that younger people were woke, because Grenfell just represents everything that is rotten in our society, and younger people suddenly saw exactly what maybe our generation had just been talking about, you know, trying to point out. They actually saw it with their very own eyes, and they now are, they'll never go back. They now are completely and utterly woke to the fact that actually austerity kills. We have a system that actually focuses on profits rather than actually community and what the needs are of ordinary people. So people are very much alert to that.
Almost a year on from the fire, there are still many questions that have not been answered. Community organisers say there is now an awareness that only by standing together will they stand a chance of getting answers from the government. Still they feel ignored, but now they believe they have the means to keep their concerns on the agenda. They might march in silence, but their message is loud.